may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, so I'm sure many of y'all know, I'm sure many of y'all hated it, but I recently made a video where we went through and talked about why I hated the Nick Chubb draft price in the first round. I mean, Nick Chubb going in the first round, while we can admit, yes, he is one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's one of the most talented guys that you're going to find at the position. I mean, he is a very bad draft pick if you were drafting him in the top 10, as we do not believe he has the top 3 running back overall upside that is required from a player that I'm drafting in that range. And we had a lot of questions. But Mason, who else would you be drafting in round 1? And I'll say, we already made a video talking about why Austin Ekeler is such a good draft pick at the back half of round 1, at the beginning of round 2 this upcoming season. But now, let's talk about someone that can literally break fantasy leagues this year. Let's talk about Cam Akers. I mean, a running back that I'm going to be loading up on in so many redraft leagues for 2021. Very excited to get into how special of a player Cam Akers is and how his situation is drastically improved this season and what you're going to be finding with a top 5 running back in the NFL. But of course, guys, please go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And for everybody supporting the show over there on Patreon, or maybe the people about to be supporting the show over there on Patreon, please check out our top posts that we have right now, where I go through and I say, hey, drop a comment with your name if you want to be entered into the $500 fantasy league that we are hosting. So it has a $6,000 pot. It's a $500 buy-in. And yes, everything's going to be run through Patreon. And what is special about this is we are giving away one of those spots for free for a supporter on Patreon. We're going to be doing a random drawing at the beginning of July, but please go drop your name on that comment if you want to be included in the giveaway. Okay, so that's it. Let's dive into Cam Akers, someone going at the very end of the first round right now. I mean, if you look at where he is going in drafts, I mean, you are finding sometimes him going behind Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, and even Aaron Jones. Now, I don't understand this at all. Now, maybe you can make the argument with Aaron Jones, given the fact that we have had that elite Aaron Jones production over the past 2 years now. And with Aaron Jones, you can say, hey, this is a running back that's going to be getting usage at the goal line, also a running back getting usage in the receiving game. So that makes sense. But obviously, the Aaron Rodgers question is a massive question mark there, which is why I would rather have Cam Akers over Aaron Jones himself this upcoming season. But if you go into Cam Akers, I don't want to just talk about how impressive he was when he broke out at the end of this past season. First, let's talk about how impressive he was as a prospect coming out of college, because this is a player in those dynasty rookie drafts that we were having in last offseason. I mean, I was drafting him over and over and over again. And no, this isn't a dynasty video. Obviously, you love Cam Akers in dynasty, but this is going to be a redraft video for his 2021 production. And here with Cam Akers, this is a running back that just turned 21. I mean, literally, it just happened. Cam Akers, already a year into the NFL, is younger than, hear me out on this, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Trey Sermon, and Michael Carter. Younger than 4 of the top 5 running backs in this year's NFL draft class. He already has a year of experience in the NFL, just turning 22 years old. I mean, that is massive. And what I really want to do to continue to talk about how great Cam Akers is as a prospect is continue to hit those highlights that we have discussed with our historical research that we presented in our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide and evaluating prospects coming into the NFL. And I know a lot of people are probably annoyed that we're talking about Cam Akers, the prospect, but when we only have such a small sample on Cam Akers, it's very important to try to remember what kind of player he was, just to make sure everything's lining up with an investment that we are making so high in the draft. And with Cam Akers, obviously, what you want to find with any running back coming out of college, any running back that you're projecting to be a workhorse, is an elite BMI, and that BMI has a direct correlation with how many touches a running back can handle per game. And Cam Akers had a 31.1 BMI coming into the NFL. This is higher than Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, and Javonte Williams. Higher than the top 5 running backs in this past year's draft. Now, another box that you really want to look for is you want your top end running backs to have elite speed. You want them to be extremely fast. I mean, this is kind of self-explanatory. And if you look at the historical research, I mean, it definitely matters at the running back position, correlating 40 time to fantasy success at the next level. And here, Cam Akers ran a 4.47 coming out of college. That was faster than Najee Harris, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon. And I know Travis Etienne is a literal track star. We have talked about this over and over and over again. Travis Etienne ran a 4.45 at his pro day, and historical studies have shown that pro day times are skewed faster than what you find with those NFL combine times. So we can naturally assume, based on the historical research that shows that there is a 0.05 difference, that actually the 4.47 at the combine for Cam Akers last year is more impressive than what you have as a 4.45 with Travis Etienne's pro day. Now, another box that you really want to see, and this is going to be very important for Cam Akers because the one thing that he lacked in his rookie season was usage in the receiving game. But there have been those studies done. We showed that you really need to have an 8.5% college target share to be able to translate your receiving skill set into the NFL historically. And Cam Akers actually was over 12%. And you look at this past year's NFL draft class, and he had a better receiving profile than Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, and Travis Etienne himself. Y'all know I'm a massive fan of Travis Etienne. But here, if Cam Akers was in this draft class, he would be easily the best running back prospect in the 2021 draft class. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to be saying, but Mason, why does that matter? It matters because this is a running back that we have already seen the production from, so he even gets that much more of an edge. He's a better prospect than Najee Harris. Cam Akers himself was a 5-star guy going into Florida State. The reason that he fell into the late second round of last year's draft was not only was that draft class loaded with CEH, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, there were so many of those top-end running backs. But with Cam Akers at Florida State, he was running behind one of, if not the worst offensive lines in the country. So Cam Akers fell slightly in the NFL draft. I mean, I think we can naturally assume that if Cam Akers went to Alabama and was running behind one of the best offensive lines in football with a quarterback like Mac Jones, I mean, Cam Akers would have most likely won the Heisman. But anyway, we go through, and what I want to be looking at is I want to look at the situation that LA was last year. And I know a lot of people are going to say, I mean, they really didn't have that top-end running back that you could go to, given the fact that you're looking at Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, and Cam Akers all splitting the workload throughout the season. But if you look on total, this team had 1,919 rushing yards last season if you take away what you have from Jared Goff. And that's going to be a main thing that I want to do. I mean, I hate it when people come out and they try to use the analysis. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens had X amount of more rushing yards than any other team in the NFL. Draft J.K. Dobbins. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Lamar Jackson himself had over 1,000 of those rushing yards. What does that do for anybody? No, you have to look at what the backfield is doing, not what the rushing quarterback's doing as well. So if you go through and you take out the rushing yards from the quarterback position, these numbers for the Los Angeles Rams last year actually put them 6th in overall rushing production out of their running back room. The only teams that had more rushing yards than the Los Angeles Rams without their quarterbacks involved, keep in mind, were the Baltimore Ravens, Tennessee Titans, Cleveland Browns, Minnesota Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers. Now, that is extremely nice to see because, you know, each one of those teams had a running back that was heavily relied on in fantasy. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens obviously is a little bit different there, but Lamar is accounting for so much of that. Then the Tennessee Titans, a top 3 running back in Derrick Henry. The Cleveland Browns, a top 10 running back in Nick Chubb. Minnesota Vikings, you have Dalvin Cook. The Green Bay Packers, you have Aaron Jones. So we've already seen that the rushing production can be there for the Rams. All you're wanting to have is all of those yards going to one running back. You want one running back having the majority of the workload there. And I will go out on a limb and say, I think this is the floor for what you're going to find with the Los Angeles Rams in their rushing production. Because I think this upcoming season, the quarterback upgrade from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford is going to be so significant that sustained drives are going to last way longer. They're going to have more trips to the red zone. They're going to have more first downs. So there's going to be even more opportunity for fantasy points. Now, at the end, I'll talk about exactly how large of an upgrade I expect Matthew Stafford to be over Jared Goff, but let's continue to look through this Cam Akers breakout. And if we go and look at Sean McVay and go, does he want to continue to use a committee? Is this a coach that doesn't necessarily want to feature a running back? Because that's what we saw in 2020. Well, that's just not true at all. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be using numbers that come from Todd Gurley, and Todd Gurley, definitely a better running back at his peak than what Cam Akers is going to be in 2021. Now, that is not a hot take at all. But going through and seeing how Sean McVay is willing to use that bell cow running back, in 2018, Todd Gurley actually averaged 22.5 touches a game, where the second best running back on this team in Malcolm Brown only had 4 touches a game. And here, Todd Gurley actually missed 2 games. So missing 2 games definitely helped Malcolm Brown get up to 4 touches a game. Then in 2017, a very similar thing here where Todd Gurley averaged almost 23 touches a game compared to Malcolm Brown's 5.5. And Todd Gurley missed the game. So Malcolm Brown got to be operating as a starter for one of those games, skewing his numbers up even more. But beyond that, you can naturally see that Sean McVay doesn't mind giving 85% of the touches in a backfield to a running back one, as long as he has a guy that he can use on all 3 downs. And that's exactly what Cam Akers is going to be this upcoming season. I mean, you look at Cam Akers, and I know that his fantasy finishes aren't necessarily anything to show that he should be a first-round pick this upcoming season. But the problem with Cam Akers is you can't really look at his rookie season on the whole, given the fact that that rib injury at the beginning of the year clearly affected him significantly, even when he was coming back being healthy, because he wasn't getting a single touch in a game. And I think based on the talent, exactly what we said halfway through the year, that Cam Akers was by far and away the most talented running back in that room, and it had to be the rib injury as an explanation of why Darrell Henderson was getting so much work. I think that holds true when you see the last 6 games for Cam Akers. Now, the last 6 games comes after December 6th, where that was the first Cam Akers breakout that you had. 2 of these games were actually in the playoffs. Another reason why those fantasy points that you're seeing on the season don't necessarily line up with everything else. But like I said, I mean, playoff games matter just as much if we were trying to evaluate a rookie breakout. So here, Cam Akers, with those last 6 games, actually averaged 22 carries a game, and he averaged 2.5 targets. And he was extremely efficient, extremely productive with this workload, and that's how he finished the season. That's what you want to see with those rookie running backs. This is what you had with David Johnson in his rookie year way back in 2015. You have them finishing the season extremely strong. That way, when you're going into that second year, you can project the player to have a full-on workload. And that's what you have with Cam Akers. Cam Akers has already shown us in the last 6 games of last year that this is a player that is easily going to see over 20 touches a game. And this is even cemented more given the fact that Malcolm Brown is now going over to Miami, and the depth chart for this team is Cam Akers as the number 1 running back, Darrell Henderson as the number 2, and then after that, literally nobody. You don't have anybody after Darrell Henderson. I mean, it is laughable, and you can just assume that Cam Akers going to be getting every single target out of this backfield, because Cam Akers, based on what we had with these 2 players as college prospects between Akers and Henderson himself, is a significantly better receiving running back, where he had over 12% of his college target share, and compared to Darrell Henderson, Henderson only had 7%. So you can assume that Cam Akers is going to be the running back getting targeted out of the backfield, and it's safe to project him to have close to 20 carries a game and 4 targets a game. And all of a sudden, this is a running back with one of the best workloads in the NFL. And now I'm expecting the Rams to have a top 5 offense at the best end, and the worst end to have a top 10. I mean, this is a team that's going to be extremely safe. You look at the move over from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford. I mean, it's laughable. There's a reason Matthew Stafford is one of the Vegas favorites to win MVP this year, because Jared Goff over the past 2 seasons, in 2019, he had 7.0 yards per pass attempt. And keep in mind the situation he was in. He had Sean McVay as his coach, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Higbee, all as his options in 2019. That is significantly better than what Matthew Stafford had. And in 2020, you actually have Jared Goff with 7.2 yards per pass attempt, and a very great situation as well. I mean, he has Sean McVay as his coach. He has Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Josh Reynolds as his 3 leading wide receivers. And he was only able to account for 7.0 yards per pass attempt in 2019 and 7.2 yards per pass attempt in 2020. Now, the transition over to Matthew Stafford is going to be massive, because you go to 2019, And with Matthew Stafford, this is a quarterback that averaged 8.6 yards per pass attempt. That is significantly higher than what you had with Jared Goff. And we already mentioned Jared Goff had Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee. Sean McVay as his coach. What was the situation here for Matthew Stafford? Matthew Stafford had Matt Patricia as his coach. And I don't really care if you think Sean McVay is slightly overrated. Definitely is a significantly better coach than Matt Patricia. Then his top options were Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola. You can safely say that Matthew Stafford is a significantly better quarterback than Jared Goff. You see this as well in 2020, where Darrell Bevell and Matt Patricia was Matthew Stafford's head coaches for the season. And you actually have 7.9 yards per pass attempt. So a mark that Jared Goff could never dream of hitting. And the situation was horrendous for Matthew Stafford. His leading receivers were Marvin Jones, TJ Hawkinson, Danny Amendola, and Quintez Cephas. It's a night and day comparison between these two quarterbacks. There's a reason that you have the Rams giving up 2 additional first-round picks to move Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. It's because they understand how big of an upgrade this is going to be. And then when you have Cam Akers stepping into a role where he's going to be a bell cow running back, and all of a sudden this is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, don't be surprised when Cam Akers is turning into Ezekiel Elliott this season. It's entirely possible, and I think it's actually, I don't want to say a safe projection, but it's not crazy. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Of course, go down there, drop that like, leave a comment telling me where you are drafting Cam Akers, and show me some hate for calling Nick Chubb an overvalued running back. I know that's going to be down there as well. And yeah, I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. Thank you to everybody supporting the show. We got some new members of the flock, and Robert, Caden, Matt, Robbie, Dan, John, Ziggy, Blake, Oliver, and Devin. Thank you, my dudes.